Hello everyone, welcome back to Inside Fnatic's Brush. It's been some time since my last video, and this time I'm gonna do things a bit differently. Now first, for those who are clicking this for the first time or maybe discovering my channel, first of all, thank you very much for your curiosity, and let me introduce myself very quickly. I'm Matt Scott, a Fnatic fan of over 10 years. I started following Fnatic way back in 2013 when I first stumbled on an interview of Expeke and Shox, and I thought, hey, that team looks pretty fun and that guy sounds pretty funny. Let me have a look. And ever since, I haven't really looked back. Actually, I've gone even further, going to live events, my first one being in 2015, having the chance to see Fnatic versus EDG at Worlds 2015 quarterfinals, and also looking at their other titles, CS, Valorant, Paladins, Heroes of the Storm, pretty much any endeavor in which Fnatic put their hands into, and again having the chance to see them live whenever I had the opportunity. And you know, Fnatic is one of the longest living orgs right now. They're entering their 22nd year and they have quite a bit of a legacy as well. It's important to say it. They're the first Worlds winner in League of Legends, whether you want it or not, they are in that history. Multiple major winners as well in Counter-Strike, winners in Valorant as well, and in even the other titles that maybe you haven't heard of or in which they aren't really in anymore. And now we're seeing that Fnatic has, kind of disappeared and not reach the same glory days as they've done recently. Now, for those who follow the channel, you know that I mainly talk about League of Legends, but I like to follow and watch and pique my interest into Fnatic's other titles, so today I'll speak about Fnatic as a whole. And this is kind of my letter to Fnatic from a humble fan who's always been on board, but who's starting to see the patterns and seeing that this organization looks lost and is going straight into a wall if nothing is done. So let's start with the obvious, the performances. If we look across the current titles right now, we'll start with the one that has the most fans, which is League of Legends, the LEC. It's been 8 years now that Fnatic hasn't won a single trophy in this title. All it's doing is getting second places, and as of the past few splits now, doesn't even qualify on to playoffs. Now you'll say, Matt Scott, Fnatic hasn't qualified to playoffs before, and they still managed to come back. Yes, but if you look at the times where Fnatic hasn't qualified into playoffs, the gap between those moments is getting closer and closer, and that is a worrying sign. On top of that, if you look at what you would call the sports project that they're trying to set up, what we've seen recently is more attempts to patch up the team instead of going through with a roster throughout the season. And we're actually gonna be into the same scenario as Imperios is about to be subbed by what seems to be another Korean from the challenger scene. And more than any other previous seasons, personally for me, that is showing a weakness and a failure in the project. In my opinion, I think you should have gone throughout the season with the same roster. Don't change anything, even though you're not getting the results, because what is the point of changing one player just in the hopes of getting to Worlds? Are you going to go to Worlds for what? Hoping to win Worlds? With a small change, with the issues that the team is having of not being able to play together, of not playing at their highest level? Not at all. So what's the point of going to Worlds? not showing instead of sending someone else from the LEC who's had a better season and has much more cohesion in their roster than what we do. You look at the other rosters, J2, Koi, and GX, who have kept their rosters, who are looking to improve and go to a higher level. Fnatic has just been doing constant changes, panic changes, trying to do last minute qualifications to get into Worlds, and for what? For me specifically, I think this season is absolutely fine to not make Worlds and have first access to the market in the off season and do a proper project. It's okay to say we've tried with this one, we didn't really manage to get who we wanted, or the pieces that we wanted, we managed to get them, but they are not bringing exactly the success that we're looking for, and therefore we're going to try again in 2027. Now that's when it comes to the players in itself in the sports project. Higher up now is where the issues lie. Fnatic has made the change of removing Dardo as general manager of League of Legends and has set him in a different role, way from the cameras, but still works within off-season projects and other matters that has to do with the competitive aspect of Fnatic. In the meantime, there is no new general manager to replace and to sort of frame the sports project for Fnatic. So it's Karn and a sort of nebula of mystery people within the organization who are never really revealed, or parts of them are revealed, with unclear roles where we can't really hold them to certain levels of performance. Very hard to point the finger. People like to go back to Dardo, but unfortunately it's not just him, and it's actually more people than just him who have, in my opinion, even a bigger impact than what Dardo had in the past. So we need to get concerned with the group that is impacting the performance and who's just been spiraling the League of Legends segment into the ground. The problem is that problem isn't only just for League of Legends. It also applies onto other titles like Counter-Strike. You have Samuelsson, who is the general manager for I can't remember how many seasons now, and who's not brought the performances necessary to bring Fnatic back to tier 1. There's been signs here and there of maybe Fnatic getting back up, and immediately they head back to the tier 2, tier 3. They had their chance last time when qualifying to the major, but even then they didn't go really far in that qualification. Pretty much like Fnatic does in League of Legends when they qualify for Worlds and then do 3 games and they're already back home. You can see the issue in having that approach with more than just League of Legends, but also Counter-Strike. With Samuelsson, he's staying for a very long time when, had it been traditional sports, he would have been kicked out long time ago. So again, Fnatic not making the right decisions, or maybe too scared of making decisions that would create notable changes at the management level. And I think that's the issue, is that we're seeing too many times the players being the victim of low resources being brought to each segment, of not giving them the tools to be successful, and especially in Counter-Strike, where there aren't really like leagues or seasons, and it's more spread out throughout the year, where players can be changed maybe just before a big event, like before or after a major, for instance. The changes in terms of Counter-Strike rosters are more frequent, so again, less stability. And in the example of Fnatic, they've done many changes throughout the season and throughout the year to find the right puzzle pieces to work out. But despite not having the results, people who are staying are the people at the top. Valorant so far has been kind of dodging Those issues in a way with Kojo doing an amazing job on his side. He's very lucky, obviously, to have Boaster by his side, who I think creates a great partnership between both of them in finding the new talent, which I think Kojo does very well. When Derke left, managed to find Kayak, who in his first year was probably the best rookie in the world. They lost Chronicle this season, and they replaced him with Vikash, who fit in very well straight away, even though he had massive shoes to fill. He was looking quite impressive. Unfortunately, got sick, as is Fnatic Valorant tradition. There has to be at least one sick player per season, and a stand-in, of course. And they've been kind of on a negative downward spiral as well, but I'm not too worried about them. I'm sure as soon as Vikash comes back into the team, they'll get back into performing as well as they were in the group stage of Split 1. With that said, what you see here is potentially Valorant being the standout team and could be suffering as well from lack of performances on the long run. And I don't mean because of what's happening right now. I mean of what's going to happen in the next year. As I mentioned, Kojo and Boaster are really the pillars of the success of this team. Boaster doing much more than just being an IGL, but being that person who's able to bring in new players, rookies, gel them and integrate them into a group, and really be the face of the Valorant segment for Fnatic. He's really the guy you want to have in the camera and taking care of business behind the scenes. He's professional, he's mature, he has a plan, and he knows exactly what to do. And he has the achievements to speak for him. Multiple domestic titles to international titles. And how long has he been playing this game now? It's going to be 7 years, maybe 8 years, with the time where he wasn't in Fnatic yet. So this guy's been around for quite some time. He's able to stay at the highest level and have domestic and international success. What happens when he eventually retires? We don't know. But if there isn't the right piece to replace someone of his caliber, could we see something similar in Valorant? I don't know. I always trust Kojo and his choices because so far the results have been great and he's always been proven correct. But how long can this go on when one of your big pieces might leave in the upcoming years? I'm saying that because Boaster's contract is coming up at the end of the season, and will he decide to stay with Fnatic or even stay as a professional player or as a member of the coaching staff? We don't know yet. But more than that, I think what we see in the example of Valorant is what's missing in the other titles. We don't have a general manager who feels like he's in control and knows what he's doing in an example of Counter-Strike, or an example of Fnatic. We don't have a general manager at all. On top of that, we don't have really a player that feels like he's at the caliber of Boaster, where you can maybe put your brand on, who feels like he's doing all that hard work behind the scenes, and who sets himself as the captain of the team, who really takes it upon himself to bring in new players into a system that he set up, and always make sure that they function at the peak of their performance. I know that Razork and Kojo has shared this in one of their AMAs, that Razork has spoken to Boaster to sort of emulate what Boaster does. But I think Razork, in his maybe personality and level of maturity, doesn't have the shoulder or the capacity to do something similar. Or maybe he doesn't really want to do, but he feels like this role has come upon him and he has to fill that role. But unfortunately, we don't really have that type of personality in the league. And I think that's also contributing in the fact that we're lacking stability. We're lacking a North Star within the roster. And it gives space to, players being changed at the last minute, coaches being changed left, right, and center, lack of resources, yada, yada, yada. When at the time, obviously, you had stronger personalities, I would say, or players that stayed a bit longer. Obviously, in the case of Fnatic, they got very lucky with, Expeke, who was that face and team captain. Then you had Reckless, who maybe wasn't as much a captain, but was definitely the face. And I know that Fnatic played a lot on getting the big brands thanks to Reckless appeal, being a very good looking player and a very good player altogether. And then that kind of dwindled. They didn't manage to find really those personalities on which they could play on. And as that went forward, that kind of impacted their branding, the personality of Fnatic as a company, I would say, and therefore the type of sponsorship and even the quality and frequency of the content that we've had going forward. Just to give you a quick example, again, let's stay on the example of League of Legends. When we look at it, go on the League of Legends YouTube, Fnatic League of Legends YouTube channel, and see what you find. The frequency of the videos. And ask yourself, how am I supposed to find any proximity, any love or attachment to the players if Fnatic isn't bringing me that content? Now, I'm not really sure exactly what's happening, but whatever it is, it's a shame because, especially right now when the team is at its lowest, it's struggling, you want to be able to support them. You want to be able to be that sixth man for the roster. And Fnatic is not giving us that opportunity, to support them, to have attachment to those players, to really create a bond. And so you see the comments, you see the feeling within the fans, and they're completely detached from that roster. And so it's not even that they hate them, they just don't care. And I think that's worse than hating, because when you don't care, then what's left? How do you rekindle that connection with the fans? The other issue is that even if you're going for new fans, what is it exactly that you're gonna create an appeal for Fnatic? What's the appeal for Fnatic? What makes Fnatic Fnatic? Why do you want to support this organization? At one point, it made sense to support Fnatic because they were the biggest organization in Europe. They were winning everything or being very competitive. They had great brand ambassadors, either the players or streamers who were attached to Fnatic, and that organization was booming. Everything was happening, and now it just feels like it's slowly sinking. All that energy is gone, and there's no appeal for Fnatic. Now the fans are just, trying to find any form of energy or copium to say, oh, it's gonna work, surely we're gonna come back. But I'm seeing the fans' response. I'm seeing how the fans behave, and they just don't want it anymore. And I cannot blame them. I'm a bit like them. And to be honest, if indeed the rumored change for Amperos goes through, I don't think I can support Fnatic going into summer, because I completely disagree with that decision. And I don't think it makes any sense. And on top of that, it's highly hypocritical, considering that their approach for this season is saying, oh, we're going for a budget roster because obviously there are some issues regarding finances because Fnatic is an older team, so it's harder to inject more money or bring in more investors for Fnatic, even though they're looking to sell shares. So again, they're not looking to sell Fnatic, they're looking to sell shares just to keep a majority control, but they're still looking, and I don't know if it's happening or not. We're hearing all types of rumors. The issue is, you were saying we're being careful of our budget, so that's why we're going for more rookies to go with a project of rebuilding. And in the end, you're still patching up instead of just seeing the season through and saying, okay, we're gonna do a little tweak to the project, but beginning of 2027. So again, you're not consistent in the direction you're going. You're not consistent with what you see at the beginning of the season. And on top of that, the quality of the sponsors has completely dropped. And I don't think it's an issue of Fnatic being an older org, and therefore maybe the younger orgs or the rebranded orgs are sexier or more attractive, and maybe as well because they have more success. That's bringing in more attention from the sponsors, because you look at a team like SK. SK is older than Fnatic, and you look at the list of sponsors that they have way bigger sponsors, way bigger brands than Fnatic on the jerseys or in other activations. Why is Fnatic not able to bring this? Because their brand has become boring. I mean, look at some of the recent merch. They brought in the pro jacket and the pro joggers, completely uninspired. It's just a black jacket with a bunch of logos slapped on. What the hell? And that's because ever since they've sponsored with Full Life, which I believe is a complete scam, the jerseys have been kind of meh in terms of their design. The pro jacket of this season is just a bunch of nothing. You could literally go to your local thrift shop, get a black jacket, and just decide to iron in a bunch of Fnatic sponsors. And you can get it for way cheaper as well. So someone needs to give me an answer here. I don't know what's happening with Fnatic. I don't recognize my organization. I don't recognize the organization I fell in love with. And more than everything, I think Karn and Sam are just out of date. I don't think they're adapted to this new version of esports. I think they're still surfing from the early days of over 20 years ago of how it was, where it was easier to pick up talent. It was maybe easier as well to go into other titles, and now they're out of resources, they're out of plan, they're out of answers, and they're just hoping that a lucky star just finds its way over the Fnatic HQ and blesses them with an amazing player or an amazing lineup to hopefully bring back some success. I think Sam should give back the keys CEO of someone who will be fully dedicated, because understand that Sam has other businesses he has to take care of. But we need someone who's dedicated to Fnatic. We need someone who comes in with a project, whose ideas are clear, and who's focused on Fnatic. Right now, if Sam is indeed, like he says, taking care of the business and responsible of bringing the sponsors, I'm sorry, he's a bad businessman. Looking at the sponsors, looking at the quality of the sponsor, the type of sponsors he's bringing in, it's rubbish. It's really not at the level of what Fnatic should be, of what Fnatic has been before, where they sponsored with the like of Gucci, for instance. Even though if it was for a one-time watch, which really wasn't that great, at least they're able to bring in brands like these. Now instead, he's doing a platform like Stashed to sell and gamble your CS skins. I don't know who it's addressed to. I don't know. I'm not a customer, even though I'm a long-time fan, and I don't know a lot of other Fnatic fans who I'm friends with or who I speak to who are going to be using this product. So who are you addressing this to? And then I heard there was another League of Legends project with maybe AI or whatsoever. Read the room, Sam. Read the room. I understand you're a tech bro. This is not what your fans want. We just want something that makes sense. We want something where we can look at growth and development. And right now we're looking at panic, we're looking at patching, and we're looking at an org that feels like it's dying, that's completely removed all communication with its fans. It's completely unclear, even though you've set up the FFA, the Fnatic Fan Association, but I don't feel it's being used or being exploited properly. Just maybe for a couple of tickets and a couple of meetings that you do with the owners, but nothing more is being done on top of that for the wider range of fans. So that's also been somewhat of a failure. When it comes to Karn, I think is a bit in the same situation. Karn, as a former player, has seen esports in its somewhat early days, and I think has stayed with this vision. I don't think he's up to the task because as well as he's responsible for all the great moments in Fnatic, and I thank him really for the legacy that he's brought to Fnatic, he's also responsible for the decline and the lack of results and the lack of clear path, where it's hard to believe that Fnatic is or will ever be successful again in one of its major titles. And again, we don't have a brand or really an identity to which we can attach ourselves to say, well, even though it kind of sucks, we still have that identity. We still have that thing that brings us together and that keeps us fans. I mean, again, talking about merch and identity, Amy, or Truban, as some of you might know, I think does a much better work into creating an identity, creating a brand for Fnatic. One example is that she's personified and made the Cow Paulo plushie alive. Something that other organizations are doing, like Team Liquid with their horse mascot, or G2 with their samurai mascot. You have the opportunity to do the same, to bring in that identity within Fnatic. Has Fnatic really done anything about it? Kinda, but not enough. They've done a plushie available in one of the boxes. They did a t-shirt mixed with the Apex Legends boys. But more than that, they haven't really done anything. They haven't really integrated it as their identity as a general mascot for League of Legends, Valorant, Counter-Strike, and Apex. Why are you not jumping on that opportunity? Why are you not creating that identity? It feels like either they're not interested in money really, or they're completely blind or unable to read the trends, to understand their fans. Because I know that when something is created in that sense, fans are super happy to get a t-shirt, get a piece of merch that has Cow Paulo on it. So why not run with it? Why not be more, I'd say, creative, more inspired? I'm looking at the recent collections beyond the Pro Jacket. I mean, the collection that came out in December, I mean, it's okay, but nothing too inspiring. It's not something that feels like a must buy. So all in all, I can't see where Fnatic is doing well or improving. And as a longtime fan, as someone who is not going to start supporting another organization, I'm scared. I'm really, really scared. It feels like an organization that has stopped trying on all fronts. Content, merch, competition, taking responsibility, communication, and, is just letting themselves float into the drop and calling it a day. So this is my cry for help. This is a fan saying, please do better. If you're going to really improve, if you're really going to be competitive again, if you really want the fans to love you again, you have to do better. And I can't really tell you what to do, but I think, first of all, you need to have a clearer structure internally in terms of who's going to be managing each section, and he has to come with a clear plan and hold himself to it, and at the same time be held accountable. Have a clearer structure with a who's who, and not a nebula of people who are taking care of performance and scouting players with some unknown machine or directory. We want to know exactly what's going on. We want as well clearer communications and follow through by the people responsible. Not necessarily have Karn every time, but have people who admit that maybe they're past their prime and who need to give the keys to someone else. I think as well, Sam needs to be honest with himself and realize that he's not built for it anymore. That he feels out of touch with the scene, with the fans, and that maybe someone else who's a bit more passionate, who's willing to put more time into the organization and focus entirely onto the organization, can take over, and he can still stay chairman, as it was at the time of Wooter back in 2015 to 2019, if I'm not mistaken, which were some of the greatest years of Fnatic. Coincidence? I don't want to say anything, but in any case, what we want to see is a clear direction. We want to see people held accountable. We don't want to see people keeping their place when there are no results and things staying the same. We want better reactions and reactions that make sense. We don't want last minute patches and players taking the brunt of the lack of professionalism or competence of some of the higher ups, because it's not for them to pay the price of people not having clue of what they're doing at the top. So I think that should be Fnatic's objective for 2027. In any case, if we're not seeing consequential changes, I don't think I can really feel hyped for Fnatic anymore. The tickets to events is becoming more and more expensive, but maybe that won't be too much of a problem if Fnatic continues to fail to qualify for playoffs or international tournaments. So in the end, maybe it's better for fans. They'll start saving money and putting it in something that will have a better impact for their personal life, because Fnatic seems to have abandoned their fans. They have abandoned the competition, and the fans just want to be fans. Fnatic, the ball's in your court. What are you gonna do? See you next year.